Glory to God the Father and Son Yeshua Messiah. Acts 21. Tyre. Paul is warned about Jerusalem. After we had torn ourselves away from the Ephesian elders, we set sail and made a straight run to Kos. The next day we went to Rhodes, and from there to Patara. On finding a ship that was crossing over to Phoenicia, we embarked and set sail. After sighting Cyprus, we passed it on the left, sailed to Syria and landed at Zor, because that was where the ship was unloading its cargo. Having searched out the Talmudim there, we remained for a week. Guided by the Spirit, they told Shaul not to go up to Jerusalem. But when the week was over, we left to continue our journey. All of them, with their wives and children, accompanied us until we were outside the town, kneeling on the beach and praying. We said goodbye to each other. Then we boarded the ship, and they returned home. Caesarea, the prophecy of Agabus. When the voyage from Zor was over, we arrived at Ptolemais. There we greeted the brothers and stayed with them overnight. The following day, we left and came to Caesarea, where we went to the home of Philip the proclaimer of the good news, one of the 7, and stayed with him. He had 4 unmarried daughters with the gift of prophecy. While we were staying there, a prophet named Agab came down from Yehuda to visit us. He took Shaul's belt, tied up his own hands and feet and said, "Here is what the Ruach HaKodesh says, the man who owns this belt, the Judeans in Jerusalem will tie him up just like this and hand him over to the Goyim." When we heard this, both we and the people there begged him not to go up to Jerusalem. But Shaul answered, "What are you doing, crying and trying to weaken my resolve? I am prepared not only to be tied up, but even to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Yeshua." And when he would not be convinced, we said, "May the Lord's will be done," and kept quiet. So at the end of our stay, we packed and went up to Jerusalem. And with us went some of the Talmudim from Caesarea. They brought us to the home of the man with whom we were to stay, Mnason from Cyprus, who had been a Talmud since the early days. Paul conforms to Jewish customs. In Jerusalem, the brothers received us warmly. The next day Shaul and the rest of us went in to Yaakov, and all the elders were present. After greeting him, Shaul described in detail each of the things God had done among the Gentiles through his efforts. On hearing it, they praised God. But they also said to him, "You see, brother, how many tens of thousands of believers there are among the Judeans, and they are all zealots for the Torah. Now what they have been told about you is that you are teaching all the Jews living among the Goyim to apostatize from Moshe, telling them not to have a Brit Milah for their sons and not to follow the traditions. What, then, is to be done? They will certainly hear that you have come. So do what we tell you. We have 4 men who are under a vow. Take them with you, be purified with them, and pay the expenses connected with having their heads shaved. Then everyone will know that there is nothing to these rumors which they have heard about you, but that, on the contrary, you yourself stay in line and keep the Torah. However, in regard to the Goyim who have come to trust in Yeshua, we all joined in writing him a letter with our decision that they should abstain from what had been sacrificed to idols, from blood, from what is strangled and from fornication. The next day Shaul took the men, purified himself along with them and entered the temple to give notice of when the period of purification would be finished and the offering would have to be made for each of them. Paul is arrested. The 7 days were almost up when some unbelieving Jews from the province of Asia saw him in the temple, stirred up all the crowd and grabbed him. "Men of Israel, help!" they shouted. "This is the man who goes everywhere teaching everyone things against the people, against the Torah and against this place. And now he has even brought some goyim into the temple and defiled this holy place." They had previously seen Trophimus from Ephesus in the city with him and assumed that Shaul had brought him into the temple. The whole city was aroused, and people came running from all over. They seized Shaul and dragged him out of the temple, and at once the gates were shut. But while they were attempting to kill him, word reached the commander of the Roman battalion that all Jerusalem was in turmoil. Immediately he took officers and soldiers and charged down upon them. As soon as they saw the commander, they quit beating Shaul. Then the commander came up, arrested him and ordered him to be tied up with 2 chains. He asked who he was and what he had done. Everyone in the crowd shouted something different. So, since he couldn't find out what had happened because of the uproar, he ordered him brought to the barracks. When Shaul got to the steps, he actually had to be carried by the soldiers, because the mob was so wild. The crowd kept following and screaming, "Kill him!" As Shaul was about to be brought into the barracks, he said to the commander, "Is it all right if I say something to you?" The commander said, "You know Greek. Say, aren't you that Egyptian who tried to start a revolution a while back, and led 4,000 armed terrorists out into the desert?" Shaul said, "I am a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of an important city, and I ask your permission to let me speak to the people." Paul's defense before the crowd. Having received permission, Shaul stood on the steps and motioned with his hand to the people. When they finally became still, he addressed them in Hebrew.